Well, this is kind of useless then.
Yes, it is.
So you can, I was connected from home and then,
Yeah, I
Well,
was.
at home I'm connected. I have good Wi-Fi there.
no, but I stay signed in on my
Oh, it's trying to do something
machine, I stay signed in.
offline, it says.
He's ready, he's giving you the thumbs up, but
Oh,
just to let you know.
Hang on a second.
Good evening, everyone. I call to order the regular Victoria City Council meeting for Monday, February 10th, 2020 at 6:30. First order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, first some announcements. The City of Chaska and Eastern Carver County School District 112 are partnering with Marina's Table for a feast and conversation about getting involved in the community. The event will be held on February 18th from 6 to 9 p.m. at the Chaska Event Center. It's free and open to the public, and if you don't know what the Chaska Event Center is, it's basically at the Curling Center. You must register to attend. Please contact District 112 for registration information. Next, we have applications are being sought for Victoria residents that are interested in impacting the future of Victoria in the following ways: Park and Rec Committee, Planning Commission, Lakes and Water Quality Committee, and a new senior committee called CARES. Applications will close on February 21st with interviews conducted at future council meetings. Lastly, there's still time to register for the city's inaugural, easy for me to say, Citizens Academy sessions, which start this Thursday, February 13th, and will be offered on Thursday evenings through March. The Academy is a great way to meet new friends and neighbors and to learn more about how your city government works. More information can be found on the city website, but you must register before Thursday. Just a quick side note, we are having a little bit of network issues. Dana is working on that, so she'll be joining us in just a moment. With that, let's move on to the open forum. I have one slip here. Here we go. Jeremy Rock? He is not here. All right, is there anybody else that would like to address the council? All right, let's move on. Council, can I have a motion to adopt the final agenda?
I make a motion, we adopt the final agenda.
Thank you. Second, please.
Second.
Thank you. Discussion? Any changes? Yep, go ahead.
I did want to pull 6.8. I just had some questions.
That's the consent agenda. Hold that for just a moment. We'll get to that in a second.
Okay.
Anything on changing the agenda, council? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? The agenda is adopted. Next, consent agenda. Can I have a motion, please, to approve the consent agenda?
I make a motion that we approve the consent agenda.
Thank you. Second, please.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you. Discussion. Judy, you said you wanted to pull 6.8?
Yes.
Okay, council, public, staff, anybody want to pull anything else off the consent agenda? Hearing none, let's go ahead and I move that we modify the approval of the consent agenda to remove item 6.8. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Discussion? Hearing none. All in favor of approving the modified consent agenda signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? The modified consent agenda is approved. Judy, 6.8, go ahead.
Okay, I just had some questions on this, and I'm sorry to bringing this up, but I just needed to understand this amendment. As I was going through it, I was trying to figure out some of the wording. and I was hoping it could be explained to me as to the responsibilities between the city and the watershed district.
If you have questions, we have Anna from the Watershed District and Bob, the city attorney. If you can answer the question. Anna, if you want to come up, I don't know who should answer the question. What's the question specifically, please?
Well, I have a few questions, and I had them.
All right, while you look for that, Anna, just for the record,
Yes,
introduce
Anna
yourself.
Brown, Planner Project Manager with Minnehaha Creek Watershed District.
Thank you.
Okay. So I'm just trying to understand, from what I can tell, of the 33 and a half acres, 20 and a half of it is the wetlands, and that's the part that you want to be responsible for.
Correct.
And in the agreement, I was trying to figure out on this, with the wording, that you want to have these rights, per se, in this agreement. When you're doing all the maintenance on this, is that something that you're paying for, or is the city paying for that?
Councilmember Black, so a month ago, we also approved an operations and maintenance plan. So that spells out the responsibilities for maintenance. So MCWD is performing maintenance in those natural areas. So that includes the prairie mound and the woodland areas, sort of the vegetation in those areas, as well as the wetland. But any sort of structures in the park, trails, those are city responsibility for maintenance.
Okay, so I'm trying to remember, wasn't that like $4,500 that?
I don't have it in front of me. I think it is spelled out in the operations and maintenance plan. But yeah, I'd have to consult that.
Okay, and then if the city wanted to change anything in the natural area, we would have to get approval from the Watershed District? Is that true?
Councilmember Black, yes. As far as the sort of vegetated areas, we would need to coordinate for any modifications there. We did intentionally omit any structures, so any existing trail or sort of more developed areas are intentionally left out of the natural areas in that exhibit.
Okay, and then this agreement is for 30 years. Is there a reason that it was 30 years?
So we let the natural areas be terminated after 30 years to give the city more flexibility after that time period. The wetland easement is permanent, so that would be a long-term obligation.
Okay. So are we buying the wetland? Or are we just buying the part that we're responsible for?
So in the original purchase agreement, there is a delta between the district's cost and the city's cost. So the district purchased the land for $875,000 and the city's purchasing it for $850,000. But you become the fee owner for all of the land, but we're just retaining easement in that wetland area.
Okay, so, and everybody's okay with this agreement for 30 years?
I have a couple questions, Judy. I'm glad you hold this.
Thank you.
Just, when you say vegetation, does that mean the city has no control over trees?
No, Councilmember Vogt, the city does actually have control over trees.
Okay, so vegetation means grasses, what is vegetation?
So Councilmember Vogt, what we envision is that we'll do sort of all of the general management of that woodland area, so all of the seeding. We're doing most of the tree work now with the park establishment, so there won't really be sort of ongoing maintenance associated with the trees. One of the reasons for sort of maintaining city control for some of the trees is that there are some ashes that remain in the park, mostly out of that Oak Savanna area, more on the island. And so I know the city has sort of an ash management program, and so the MCWD doesn't typically kind of manage that type of tree cover.
So the city has the ability to plant a certain species of tree or to take down a tree if they see the need. Is that true?
Councilmember Vogt, I'd have to sort of I'd have to look at the operations and maintenance plan, but I think the way that it is spelled out in the operations and maintenance plan, the city is managing the tree cover. So I believe so. The other thing that we've done in the, both in the operations and maintenance plan and in the easement is that we can make changes to the management by just adjusting the operations and maintenance plan. So we wouldn't necessarily need to sort of go back through the process of, negotiating the easement to change some management within really the park as a whole.
So this easement is 20 acres of the 38, how does that work?
The wetland area is 20 acres. I'm not sure what the acreage is of those natural areas, which are really just sort of established to allow the district to maintain those areas that we are investing in. So we're paying for the establishment of the prairie mound, as well as the establishment and tree care within the woodland area. So the natural areas cover those areas that we are making the investment in.
Right, but if there's 38 total acres and the wetland is 20,
We get about 15.
you get what, 15?
Yeah.
So is there 3 missing there, or am
Well,
I
it's
wrong?
33 and a half.
33 and a half,
20 and a half.
okay. So there's no missing acreage,
No.
okay. I have the same question about the 30 years. Couldn't it be 15? Or what's the reason, how did you come up with 30?
That was at the suggestion of the city attorney.
Okay,
And Mayor and Council, if I can, just globally, a comment is, let's be clear about this, agreement and the prior operations and management agreement, frankly, all of the documents in this deal have truly been the product of negotiation. I mean, the parties here are working cooperatively, no doubt, but we've had some different perspectives on things, and we've had to negotiate a number of the points, including some of the points that have been asked about in this easement document. As to the question about the length of it, I think the district's preference would have been to make this be a permanent set of easements. Obviously, from my perspective on your behalf, we wanted to limit that and have some rights to someday down the road change uses here, and where we ended up was 30 years. Quite candidly, they accepted our proposal of 30 years. 30 years from my side of the negotiation, that is a very common term for a long-term easement, and I think we were acknowledging that this was intended to be a long-term arrangement. So 30 years sounds like a long time, but it's certainly not 100 years, which is kind of another, the ultra long-term, almost indefinite easement. The longest you see is 99 years. So we were tending toward the shorter end of a long-term easement arrangement. Could it have been 15 years? Sure, it could have been, but we proposed 30 and they accepted.
So after this amendment, are we finished with amendments? Are we going to be able to close the deal?
Yes, this is the final purchase agreement amendment. And originally, the second cooperative agreement just had some specific things identified that we had to modify in the purchase agreement. But then as we had gone through the design where the district was expanding their investment, we wanted to also adjust the easement accordingly. But yes, this will be the final amendment. And then in the second cooperative agreement, closing occurs within, I believe it's 21 days of awarding the contract for the park construction. So that would have us closing in mid-March.
Okay. Are we okay with where we have the money till then?
Councilmember Black, Mayor, members of the council, we do have the money. We're ready to pay that. We do have that in fund balance, and it's still at risk for being at arbitrage, negative arbitrage, but we have put that money in the lowest yielding possible interest account. So our preference would be, again, to close the deal as soon as possible so we can make that payment.
Because I understand we've been trying to close this deal for a while, and the district has not been willing to accept the money.
Well, Councilmember Black, in the second cooperative agreement, it spells out the terms in which we would close, and that's after the construction contract has been awarded. So it can be, you know, the day after we sign the construction contract, it's just within 21 days.
Okay.
Are we on target to get the construction contract ready? March, did you say March 2nd?
So Councilmember vote, we are actually going to be receiving bids tomorrow, so our fingers are crossed for a good competitive bids. And then our board will be reviewing the contract, our second meeting, which is, I believe it's February 23rd, and then it would be coming to City Council, your first meeting in March.
So it looks good, and
Looks
we'll be
good.
able to make payments.
Okay.
We're not used to wanting to make the payments.
Yes.
But, I know, but we have money that is could go into arbitrage, and I'm concerned about that. Is there something that we could use that money for right now? And then just bond for the whole thing? I just don't want to lose that money.
Yeah, given the timeframes involved, I think there's low risk of that happening. We're talking about executing in a relatively short order here.
Okay. I just want to make sure that we're doing the right thing for the citizens of Victoria.
Yeah, I think we are. Council, any further comments?
No, thank you.
Okay, if there's no other further comments, thank you, Anna.
Yeah, thank you.
Can I have a motion to approve consent agenda item 6.8?
So moved.
Second, please.
I'll second that motion.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? 6.8 is approved unanimously. Without council objection, I see Jeremy Rock is here. I'm going to go back to the open forum.
Yes.
Okay, Jeremy? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor Funk, Council. My name is Jeremy Rock, 5925 Marsh Lake Road is my address. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. I'm sorry that I walked in a little late. I do have something to hand out to you, but I'll do that at the appropriate time. I'm going to ask you for something tonight, but first I want to start with an apology. I apologize that I didn't stay more involved in the discussion at the previous council meeting. After I sat down and there was more discussion, I should have interjected more what I know about the situation because I think we got a little off track. I want to ensure that I'm being clear and complete in my explanation of the proposed adjustment to the Marsh Lake Road alignment, not only for the council members, but also for the large number of people that have expressed support for this proposed shift in the area. I'm going to ask you to add this to the agenda for tonight's meeting so that you can make a more fully informed decision about this opportunity to improve the road at zero cost to the taxpayers and residents of Victoria. As the property owners for the land on both the north and the south side of the road along 5925 and 5920 Marsh Lake Road, my wife and I would donate the land and the right-of-way to make this change happen to no cost to the city. Additionally, I do this kind of work for a living, and I'm completely comfortable with the boundary line change that'll be required to make this happen. A surveyor can easily make the necessary changes to the property descriptions for both parcels, especially since both parcels are owned by ourselves. There's no party to the transaction that would need to negotiate. The surveyor can make those changes. The changes can be recorded at the county recorder's office very easily. There shouldn't be any complicated legal issues with the legal descriptions or the creation of the right-of-way for the new location of the road. One of the concerns that was mentioned after I finished speaking at the last meeting was the concern that the city would have some sort of legal precedent or create a precedent or have some sort of legal liability if the council chose to spend tax money to make a change that wasn't deemed to be in some sort of for a public interest. While I can appreciate this fact, the issue is not really valid in this situation for two different reasons. First, we're not proposing to spend any taxpayer money on making this change. We're proposing to make this a net zero cost impact on the project. I feel like there was some feeling amongst some council members that this was some sort of favor being asked by myself because I want some sort of larger yard or something to be graded out for me. That's not the case. In fact, as you'll see in the packet that I'm going to give you here, we're not even asking for the old roadbed to be removed or graded at all. That roadbed could even be used as the base for a beneficial berm to be made along the new roadway. Second, there's actually a public benefit for making this change, as there is a safety impact in removing the unintentional curve that's present in the current road as it lies today. If you look at the diagram that I'm going to hand you on page 4, you can see that this proposed change would simply remove the southern curve in the road and keep vehicles moving along a straight path, which the road engineers have told us repeatedly is the safest path for any road. While the safety impact might not be as large as lining the entire road with safety barriers or something like that, there is a good reason to make this small safety improvement, especially when it can be done at no cost to the taxpayers. Why wouldn't we make this kind of free improvement while we're at it? My request for this change in the final design of the road is based on really a simple question. Why would we not listen to the citizens in their request for an improvement to the safety of this road, no matter how minor, when you have no taxpayer cost impact in doing so? So I ask that you move to direct city staff to instruct SRF designers to design the horizontal alignment of this road with the proposed northern shift, with the agreement that the property owner at 5920 will allow up to 5,000 cubic yards of fill to be deposited in the eastern portion of the property. That way there is a financial benefit to the taxpayers by much more, or at least as much, if not more, than the cost of the minor earthwork required for the slight shift in the road. That's all I wrote so that I wouldn't forget anything. And I do have some handouts, and page 1 is a map that's kind of reiterating what we proposed, but it also has 3 lines, A, B, and C, as a cross-section, and what I've added to this then is a sketch of the proposed, what we call a typical section, or what we've heard called a typical section, to kind of show at A, here's the current road, and here's what we'd propose. At B, here's the current road, here's what we would propose, to kind of show you how much movement there is and why this is really a minor change in the roadway. And then the third page shows the topography. So this was created when mapping out the ghost plat for the property to show the topographical lines continue on pretty consistently to the north side of the road, so you can see that there's no more than a 2-foot difference in the elevation, so that we're not moving very much soil. And then the last page, page 4, shows kind of a graphic representation. This is a photo looking west down the road from the creek curve to show where the proposed road would go straight. The current road curves back to the south, and so you can see at the peak of the hill, which also by coincidence is where the sun sets for a good portion of the year and kind of blinds you as you come up the road. That area where it's curved back to the south now, I don't think was intentional. I think it just happened over the years. But if we shifted that over, that would help a little bit in that distraction to safety on the road as well. So I'll give you each a copy of that. And
Can you give them to Dana, please?
Yes.
To distribute them. The, Kara? Well, hang on a second, Kara. Council, questions for Jeremy first? Any questions?
Just a,
Go ahead.
in terms of the intent here is to not have the city pay a red cent
correct.
to make this small alignment in the road.
Correct.
How do we ensure that? Because the city will be in charge of the excavation process. And is it just a matter of where the fill is going to go, where the dirt is going to be moved to? Or is there anything else that could be a contingency here that would cost the city money? We need a professional opinion on, what's going to happen here.
So-
I'm sure you believe what you just told us, and you're in the business, but everything that you say has to be corroborated on a professional level, I think.
So I think when Kara gave us her, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt.
That's
Go
it.
ahead. Councilmember Vogt, I understand the question, and the location of the road being 50 feet to the side changes nothing about the geology of the soil. The core sampling that we've done is within the 66-foot right-of-way of the current road. So shifting the road less than 66 feet, in essence, is the same. So the base that's under that road, if I understand correctly from my conversations with Kara and a couple road engineers and a couple of excavation companies that do road building, there is no value in the current road bed that will be removed to 2-foot depth to replace with the cross-section that was proposed for the 9-ton road. And so the work that is needed to shift the location is purely removing my 4 trees that will be in this new right-of-way, which I will do at my cost, and relocating my fence, which I will do at my cost. Other than that, the portions of moving this road pertain to the road no matter where you put it, meaning you're going to pull out this 2-foot base no matter where you put it. So it's just a matter of grading off that soil in the new location and putting it somewhere else. And the overall road project still is taking that 2 feet from the entire length of the road. So as a whole, if I understand correctly, and you'll have to answer that, the entire road is being removed to a 2-foot depth for the whole 1.6 miles, and that soil needs to go somewhere. And so I'm proposing that not only the soil that we generate from scraping this area to the north to make it the same elevation, but additional fill would be able to be placed on my property so that there is a cost savings to the project, at least equal to the cost of the 3 pieces of equipment that are used to scrape and compact the soil where the road would be moved.
And we would need verification that that is the case.
And Kara has told us that we need to give SRF direction on how to design the road. So we're kind of in this catch-22 of what do we do next? So if my understanding is correct, we need to tell SRF where to design the road. So if we don't tell them to design it here now, then we don't really have the opportunity to make this beneficial change. So I'm not sure how to answer that question.
Any other questions?
So Jeremy, you're proposing that the old road bed still gets removed, is that correct?
I'm proposing that this area where we move it, the old road bed doesn't get removed. The
Okay, so
gravel
we
simply
leave that
gets,
road there. So that in and of itself is a little bit of a cost savings
correct.
to the city. Now, how do you propose taking care of the survey work and then the legal work that would be involved in relocating?
I would take care of that myself. Because the only survey and legal work that would be required is the changing of the boundary between the 2 properties,
Right.
as the city already owns or has easement to or whatever, the property to the west. So because our property boundaries actually meet in the center of the road, and then there's an easement for where the road sits now, we would be relocating the border between 2 properties and defining that, and then re-establishing a permanent easement to the city for the new roadbed location.
Bob?
I'm favorable to your proposal, and I'm just curious if Carrie has, I know she'll have input, but the road's been there forever, and I would think that there's some value in that compacted base. So if we're moving it, we have to somehow make sure that that road that we're moving it to is compacted to that same degree. But if we're removing 2 feet throughout the whole roadbed, I don't know if there's value in the old roadbed itself.
Councilmember Gregory, I actually asked that question to an earthwork specialist
Okay.
who does this kind of thing for that reason, because I wanted to establish, is it true that the roadbed has no value if you're taking out 2 feet of it anyway? And he agreed that the 7 inches of gravel on the top is really the only part of road that's there. The base really is what was an undisturbed soil base 150 years ago or whatever.
Okay.
Bob, my assumption is there's problems with having an individual do legal and survey work for the city that we would need to have professionals because of liability and other cost reasons. Is that an accurate assessment?
You'd want certified people to do the surveying, a certified surveyor. I'm not sure that it matters, though, whether the city literally retains that person or a landowner does. I mean, they have obligations either way. There may be a cost savings, though, if we're going to have this entire section surveyed. I don't know that we would, but, yeah, so Kara's shaking her head that we wouldn't. So, no, I mean, to the extent the landowner here is proposing to get back a little bit of right-of-way on the south side and give right-of-way on the north side for free, and cover the cost of the surveying, I mean, I can't say that just the technical costs, first of all, they wouldn't be that great, and that nothing that's being described there is particularly difficult. I think it's an engineering question. Does the engineering make sense or not, and are there additional costs from a
Got it.
road building standpoint or not?
Got it, thank you. So any review that we'd have you do would be minimal?
Yeah.
Got it.
I take it, if I had to do something, there's a little bit of reimbursement we might ask for, but it's not significant. There's not a lot of legal work to do on something like this.
Got it, thanks. Kara?
Mayor, members of the city council, so I have a list of things, and you've already touched on some of them, but I'll walk through them again for the purposes of following my list. When we covered this last time, we had provided, based off of a little bit of authorization from the city council to do some high-level cost estimating. We estimated the cost to shift the road in the location requested to be about $60,000 to $150,000. The $60,000 on the low end assumed that the existing soil beneath that 7 inches of gravel over the top of the road would remain in place. So that's how we got the number down to the $60,000 by leaving that road bed in place. So now we're asking, now that we know what the property owner is willing to potentially participate in the project, is there a way to get to no net cost to the taxpayers? So that's what I spent some time working on today, viewing it through that lens. And I came up with, first of all, those couple of costs, like the cost of the surveyor, the cost of the attorney, so we've already covered those 2 costs. And then, of course, the cost of the engineering. I think if you were to authorize moving it today, I don't know that there's a significant added cost for the engineer to design the road here versus there. They've already done a lot of the preliminary work, so if you just right out decided, yep, we're building the road over here, I don't think there's significant adds in engineering costs. If you wanted to carry 2 options all the way through to bidding, then there would be an incremental cost for creating plan sheets for 2 different alternatives for bidding purposes. The true cost, though, the bulk of the cost is in the construction costs. So just to touch base on what the process looks like, trying to not get too technically detailed. Jeremy first touched on the tree clearing and the fence relocation that would need to happen in the area that the road needs to move. The property owner certainly could go in and do that before the contractor did the work. But let's say now that's out of the way, the contractor comes in to do the work. Typically, the first thing they're gonna do in that area where we're moving the road to is they're gonna remove the existing topsoil and stockpile it somewhere. So they're gonna bulldozer come in, push the topsoil into a pile, and then we'll come in and grade the area out for where the road needs to go. We are estimating that material of soil that's got to get moved in order to accommodate the new road. So not the deep excavation, just the grading to get it level, to then deep cut 2 feet down, to be in that 3,000 to 4,000 cubic yard range. Closer to 3, I think, is where we landed when we looked at the number last time. They'll do that grading. Jeremy's proposing that the contractor would take that material and push it into a pile onto their property. His property. New road gets built, so those costs are the same. If you build the road on point A or the road on point B, the costs of building that 2-foot sand section are the same if they're in either location. You build the new road, and then the area where you took off the class 5, you're gonna need to take that topsoil that you stockpiled and spread it out over the old road bed, and then we're gonna put grass over the top of it. I can't get that number to 0 because there's still the cost associated with moving the material. So by being able to keep it on site, that's quite a bit of cost savings compared to if we had to haul it away. So that can bring that 60,000 down some number. Now, what Jeremy noted today, which was not information I had this afternoon, is he's suggesting that his property could take an additional 2,000 cubic yards from the rest of the project that would otherwise be hauled away. So that's where that potential cost savings would come to the city, the taxpayers, is instead of having to haul 2,000 yards off-site from up the road, we would be able to move it to his site. So there's still the cost associated with moving it, so we'd have to do some math on what that delta is. But that is what I understand you to be proposing, how we would
Correct.
get that down to zero is by you being able to take more material than what we would have had to haul away.
We could completely eliminate the dump truck portion of it because the equipment removing it could deposit it versus load it.
You know, it depends on the type of equipment that's moving it. So, you know, typically you would go through bid practice with the contractor to figure out what those numbers are, because typically when they're excavating for the roadbed, they're using,
Miller? Or a
is this helpful?
excavator
Is this a very
scooper
technical
thing
term for you?
that has one of
Why
these?
is that happening to me? A backhoe, thank you. Typically, they would load that material into a truck and haul it, so they still may need to truck it and haul it, but it's a much shorter haul, and they're not hauling it to
They're not paying to get
Cologne,
rid of it.
right,
Right.
across the road. So that is how he's suggesting that you could take to offset the costs of moving the material around the site.
This appears that it's not a perfect science.
Correct.
No matter what you do, it's not a perfect science.
Correct.
But the city needs to be held harmless. So I would suggest until the project's over, when the project starts, there be some kind of bond or deposit that you give us, and you'll get your money back when the road is done and we didn't spend a penny.
We could also do an easement, you know.
We need a guarantee to protect the taxpayers. If there's some unexpected costs due to a shift, would you be willing to sign an agreement to say you would pay those costs?
Absolutely. That's the intention, is to make this so that it's not a taxpayer impact.
Right.
It's purely a logical
Just have an
change.
agreement. We need a bond, we need a deposit.
Right, I think we need both. We need the guaranteed source of funds so that if there's an issue, we have something to draw upon.
And I think you can also secure comfort for the taxpayers by having a, what do we call it, temporary construction easement that would encompass much more than the normal easement that you'd be looking for, with the rest of the road being within the current 66-foot easement. We'd be working in a bigger space, so.
So we would need your guidance to see how much money we need to be held harmless, so the citizens don't take a hit on this at all.
And this is costing us money to put all of this together, fine. I think the costs are minimal for these technical costs. Bob, how difficult would it be to draft an agreement to hold the city harmless, get the bond, whatever the amount is that we come up with, to make sure that the city and the taxpayers are protected from any unexpected costs? Is that a difficult thing to put together? And
Yeah, so Mayor and Council, your staff, I know, has an escrow agreement that they've worked out that they've used a couple of times now, and is a good agreement that I've looked over, and that would be perfectly appropriate for covering the money part. As far as sort of indemnifying the city from the work to move the road a few feet or a few dozen feet or whatever it is, that is a one-pager, and no, that's not a big deal.
all right, what about if we run into something, I don't want to see the project get tied up because we run into some sort of an issue. If the council approves this, is that something that can be addressed so that we don't end up, what I don't want to see is something unexpected, unplanned for comes up, then we get into a battle with Jeremy, which I'm hoping would not occur, but I don't want to see the whole project tied up because of something, when we try to do something like this, where if the council agrees to move the road. How do we protect ourselves against that?
Well, the short answer, maybe the easy answer for me is that I know your manager is thinking the same thing. I mean, this has garnered enough public interest that I think certainly you'd have to amend your agenda, add an action item. Probably preferable to add that to the next agenda rather than this one, just given the amount of attention this subject has
Agreed.
gotten. And in the interim between now and then, I think we could work out all of the 2 or 3 little relatively simple instruments that would have to be done. And those would be shifting the risk, any risk of cost to the resident, related to asking SRF to redesign or design for this alignment. In other words, that was a lawyer way of saying, I think we could get it all kind of worked out in the next 2 weeks. I don't think it's that difficult to do, so.
Thank you. One final question. How does this proposed alignment, and this is for you, how does the proposed alignment compare to what the county originally planned way back when? Is this, one of the things that we talked about when we approved, we being the council, when we approved Marsh Lake Road and keeping it a city road, is as development occurred and as discussions occurred, we would consider what the county wanted long-term, right? Would this fall in line with what the county had envisioned?
This would be closer with what the county had envisioned long-term.
All right, so this wouldn't cause us issues if we went ahead, okay.
No, it would,
might
it
actually
it
help us
helps,
in the future.
particularly if Jeremy's property to the north were to develop, then the road's in the right place relative to development
Okay.
versus the wrong
So,
place.
let's do a couple of things. Council, if you don't mind.
One more quick question.
Yep, I'm sorry, go
Is-
ahead.
Just based on your observation, Carrie, is there room for 2,000 cubic yards on Jeremy's property? And what is ballpark cost savings to move 2,000 yards?
So the answer to your first question, Councilmember Gregory, I haven't looked at that, but Mr. Rock has looked at it and has had a developer take a look at it. And so I'm relying on his conclusion of how he wants to use his property. Doesn't seem like I should weigh in on that, so I haven't. And then your second question was what again? Oh, the
Ballpark
cost?
cost savings to move 2,000 yards.
I just started to do that math while he was talking. It could be significant, depending on what the cost is to relocate it, but geez.
I know it takes a lot of money to move dirt, so that's why I was curious.
Yeah, it felt in the ballpark to offset the cost of what
That's what I
I was
thought.
saying potentially, so I can see how one could get to zero with that math.
Good.
right.
Mayor, I have a quick question.
go ahead.
So I know that SRF is currently trying to engineer this road.
Mm-hmm.
And what does our 2-week timeline to get this agreement wrapped up due to that
Good question.
process?
It would be helpful if there's indication, like there's, assuming everything goes the way it's supposed to, like there's general support for pursuing this, I think I would direct them to start looking at the new alignment as they're going through. It would be much easier to pull them back to the existing alignment than it would be to have them design on the existing alignment and then move it. So,
Got it.
you know, if I'm seeing head nods that it looks like this could be a thing. Alternatively, the other way we could approach it is we could, probably for not a significant amount of money, have them base bid hauling the material off-site and alternate bidding relocating the road, but it's a little bit more complicated from a plan development perspective. That
Well, it's just.
kind of messy.
Seems like we're close enough to make it move.
Right, a few hours of staff time are insignificant compared to the overall cost. So at this point, council, without objection, I move that we add this zero-cost road alignment for Marsh Lake Road onto the next city council agenda. Can I get a second to that?
Second.
Any further discussion? I don't know if we
Just a couple comments. When you come up with the dollar amount, there should be a contingency in there, assuming there's a, so the city is absolutely protected.
Yeah, Councilmember Vogt, hold that thought for a second. I'm going to ask for a motion specifically to
Okay.
kind of do that. As I think about it, I don't know if we really need a motion to put this on the agenda. Council, are we in agreement to add this?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so we can just add that without a motion. Councilmember Vogt, if you want to make a motion outlining what it is that we want the staff to draw up, we'll entertain that, please.
We want the staff to draw up a contract, which would be where the owner of the property would have to advance the city a certain amount of money, which would cover any costs that might be incurred on a net basis. In other words, if this is not a zero-cost impact to the city, we will need an estimate of how much we need for our insurance, our escrow. So how big, we need an estimate of escrow, and it needs to be put into a contract, and then we need to get the cash in our bank account. And that should be a good estimate, good faith estimate, but with a contingency in it. Normally, we have contingencies of 25%, something like that, so that this is absolutely above board, and that people in the area are seeing what's happening here, and they feel that this is in the best interest of the city. It's going to serve your purposes, which are decent. But we are not going to get, the city is not going to get left holding the bag here. And it's not just a monetary thing. The contract has to stipulate timing. We need to have all this paperwork worked out in 2 weeks. And during the construction process, there has to be certain stipulations that where things are done on time. You're removing trees, you're removing fences, you're organizing this or organizing that. It's all done way ahead of when the heavy equipment comes.
I'd be more than happy to work with city
So
staff
that's
to
got to
get
be
that
in
together.
the paperwork.
Yeah,
The city absolutely, and, you know, your concept is good. I think we all agree. A straighter road is better, and that if it's more in line with the county's plan in 20 years, it'll save time and money at that time. So,
Well, hopefully the idea is in line with benefits to all the taxpayers, that this is a better road design. It makes me a little uncomfortable to be the one person holding the bag financially, but I'm confident that there's enough financial benefit to the project to have that offloading spot for this extra fill, that we're not going to have an issue, so.
So in order to do a motion that covers these key points, council, without objection, I think I've got, at least I think I have a sense for what the council wants to do. Let me
Mayor?
propose just a couple of, yep,
We don't need a motion, we can just do direction. That would be fine, and I got the.
okay, all right, so
You
the,
can reiterate the direction, but.
right, that's
a
what I'm
long
just,
motion.
oh, perfect, you're right. If we don't have to do a motion, then even better, because drafting it on the fly never works well.
I've got a 4-page document here, mate. No.
So what I've heard the council say, and council jump in if I'm missing anything or if you think this is inaccurate, we want staff to draft the papers necessary to protect the city from any costs. We need paperwork that Jeremy Rock and the property owners are willing to sign that protects us from any, us, the city, from any liability. We need papers that create a bond or a insurance fund or, Bob, what's it called? A surety bond?
Well, Mayor and Council, I think we've used an escrow agreement.
Escrow agreement, okay.
Cash money that gets held by a third party, not us, not the resident, that then is paid out against project costs. So
So we want the escrow agreement to protect the city in case there's any unexpected costs. And Jeremy, you said you're willing to sign that agreement to protect the city.
I would be very willing to sign something to protect the city. The details, of course, we have to work that out
Okay,
of how it
so
works.
there is a timing issue here. This needs to be done within the next 2 weeks in order to keep the project on track and not delay it. You're willing to get that done?
I will cancel my trip to Tahiti so that I can be here for 2 weeks. No, I will be here, absolutely.
Okay. Council, were there any other key points?
this has to be a 9-ton road. and It can't be a little blip where it's not 9 tons.
Oh, it will be.
That doesn't change.
That doesn't
That's the
change.
same versus
No.
whatever. No,
Okay. Kara, is that all the points you needed addressed?
That's all I need.
Bob? Is there anything else that you need from us, from the council, in terms of directions to put this together?
You know, I just said to Dana, it may be an optical illusion, but I guess the other cost that we'll have to talk about, I don't think there's anything to change from the council perspective, but it looks like there may be a utility pole that needs to get moved. I guess I can't tell if that's an optical
Possibly.
illusion or not, but
Yep.
that there could be a cost associated with that. But no, I think staff gets the direction is to get paperwork in order, agreed to preferably in advance of the next meeting, and if it's not, if we can't work it out, I think you're not gonna change the alignment of the road, and if it can be worked out in 2 weeks, staff gets that.
All right, and one final point, council. The council has no objection for the city staff spending some time on this, but if we have to get outside services, outside surveys, that cost shouldn't be borne by the taxpayers. It would be picked up by you, should it be needed, correct?
That's how I
You're willing
understand it.
Yes.
Okay. Council, any other points?
No, sir.
Okay, I think we've got general agreement then, so thank you.
Thank you.
Good job.
Okay. Next up, first item on the regular agenda, oh, wait. Did we approve 6.8 on the consent agenda? Okay, we did. Sorry, thanks. The next item up is 7.1, city participation in the GreenStep program. Do we have Diane McCowan?
Diana McEwen.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're up.
Oh, I was understanding that I was going to go second.
Oh.
Did you get my PowerPoint?
It's up.
Perfect. Thank you. Oh, thank you so much. Good evening, council. How are you tonight?
Good.
So I am here with the GreenStep Cities program, and I normally do kind of like, here's what it is, here's how you join. That is not the situation tonight. So I'm going to do a little bit to familiarize folks with the program, and then talk through, I think, some of the concerns, perhaps, misinformation that's come up. I am not here to pressure anybody to join, not join, leave, stay. It's your community's decision, but I think it's really important that the decision is made with all the information on the table. There's been a lot of misinformation out there about the program, so I want to hopefully clear some of that up. So first, it's just a quote that we've used from former Governor Carlson. He helped start a lot of the sustainable development that happened in the state of Minnesota, and he just really saw it as a common sense thing for our environment and our economy together, and that's been the case in Minnesota for a very long time. I'll just quickly go through some of these. So the GreenStep cities, and it's GreenStep cities and tribal nations. There's 3 tribal nations that have actually joined the program as well. It's very basically an action-oriented program, pure focused path for sustainability. That's how it came about. The program elements, as you can see there, there are a couple things that I'll hit a couple of times, but it's a voluntary program. It's self-paced. It's free to join. There's a number of different things there. There's a whole menu of best practice actions and under the 29 best practices. So those are key elements. The Minnesota GreenStep Cities program was developed here in Minnesota. I was actually part of that process a dozen years ago. It started in 2007 with some cities that really wanted to get recognized for some of the sustainability work they were doing. And it kind of morphed from that a bit. The League of Minnesota Cities said, that's great, but we wanted, if you're going to do something, don't just do clean energy, focus more broadly on sustainability. There's a lot of things that are interrelated. The legislature asked us for a report about what this program might look like, and so then that happened with the aid of an advisory group, technical committees. I actually helped co-convene the advisory group that included cities from across the state in different ways. There were elected officials, there were public works directors, there were planners, we really wanted to make sure it wasn't just people that said, yeah, let's join this program, but not the people that would make that happen. We wanted a real variety of folks to give input, and we put together kind of the bones of a structure and got some feedback from them. And a couple of things that they said was that they really wanted a menu of choices. They didn't want a cookie cutter, like, not every city in Minnesota is different, the same. And so that's why there are so very many actions, which sometimes for folks is overwhelming, because they really wanted that. And so that's a big part of the reason why there's such a big variety of actions that can be chosen. We worked on it for a couple of years, and actually, I think I say this later, but there was a beta process that happened with a handful of cities that tested it, and Victoria was actually one of the cities that was part of that beta testing through ULI and the Regional Council of Mayors back then. And then we officially launched in 2010 at the League of Minnesota Cities Conference, and so this is actually our 10th year. And then at that time, it only had 3 steps, and then cities that were getting to 3 said, okay, now what? What about 4 and 5? And so then we did some more work, and with 4 and 5, there was a decision, like, do they do more best practices, or do we really see what the impact is? I think there was a lot of interest in what is the impact. So we did take that advice, and for 4 and 5, it's more measuring the outcomes and measuring those things. And so there's metrics that cities, if they want to continue on in the program to 4 and 5, they can actually measure their impact and outcomes. It's a partnership, public-private partnership. A couple of state agencies, a couple of nonprofit organizations. Obviously, the League of Minnesota Cities was in on the ground floor from the very beginning. And so there's about 4 full-time staff people across the partners. One full-time staff person at the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, a half-staff person that's at the Environmental Quality Board, and then a handful of folks, my colleagues, I spend some time, and others that spend some time on the program. Some key program outcomes. On the website, it only says 134 cities, but the city of Carver, one of your neighbors, a few weeks ago joined the program, and they're just not on the website yet. It takes sometimes a little bit of time for that. Nearly half the state's population, I actually think Brooklyn Park is going down the path, and so I think once they come on board, we're going to get even closer to that. And that's interesting because it's almost 50% without Minneapolis. Minneapolis is not a GreenStep city. They have not joined. This program was not designed for the big cities of Minnesota. Minneapolis and St. Paul and St. Cloud and Rochester and Duluth and those cities have the staff and a capability and capacity to do these kinds of things without much help. This program was really aimed at medium and small cities because we know most of the cities are 5,000 and under. So that's the point of the program, was really geared at those cities. And it's a really diverse, I think in the early days of the program, they were probably more you wouldn't be surprised, the Maplewoods and the Edinas and the other cities that were joining the program, but we have a variety of cities all over the place, rural, urban, politically very different based on voting records, et cetera. So it's just really interesting, I think, as I watch the program grow. There's major benefits for each of the best practices that we identify, and there's a whole variety of the benefits, and so each best practice is associated with one of the benefits. So I always share with cities, who around you are GreenStep cities. Like I said, Carver recently joined. Eden Prairie is a Step 5 city. They're going gangbusters up there. Shakopee's a newer city. Chanhassen and Shakopee both joined in 2018, and I've worked with them some. Jordan has been in the program for a while and is really using the program quite a bit. And so, I think more about why cities join and kind of, the how of it. Some cities join for different reasons, but, they pay more attention and are more intentional about things. They document, they share progress, they learn from each other, from their peers, choosing their own path and really proceeding at their own path. And, I believe, even with, Girl Scouts, you have to kind of share, what you did in order to get recognized, to get a badge. I think I had to, provide some proof before I got my Girl Scout badges. So we do have some reporting in order to get recognized at certain for steps if you want to move forward. The next slide is really a little bit more about that. Saving money is a huge motivation, not shockingly, based on the conversation I just listened to, for cities. And saving money, it's a huge motivation. You're saving taxpayer money. And I've got examples later on about some of the cities and some of the money that they've saved, technical assistance, et cetera. There's a lot of reasons to join. I'm going to talk a little bit, this is very small font, I'm sorry about that. But what the program is, it's, again, sound a little bit like a broken record, but self-paced, city-oriented. You choose, you don't do actions you don't want to choose. It's a focus on improving the quality of life in cities. A lot of cities look at that as a way to improve the quality of life in their cities, whether it's trees or bike paths or whatever it might be. Again, there are recognition standards. It's not surprising. And this program, again, was really vetted by Minnesota cities. So what the program isn't, it is not connected to any international program of any kind. It was, again, born here in Minnesota with Minnesota cities. All the best practices are based here in Minnesota. It's not mandatory. It's voluntary. There's no requirement by the state or the Met Council or anybody else that any cities join the program. It's voluntary. And it's not a tool for requiring any certain regulations or ordinances. There are sample ordinances up there because cities have asked us for that. They want to know, if we want to do an ordinance, do you have any samples for that? I just was asked again last week for something. So you know, and I heard that maybe there was some concern about a connection to an international standard, and I believe that was the UL listed. It's a fire and safety code. Solar panels have to, you know, have certain UL listed. So there are things in there that if you're going to get solar panels, that you probably want to get UL listed solar panels. It's a international standard, global certification for fire and safety. There's been a lot of questions brought up about the Met Council role. The Metropolitan Council is not a GreenStep City partner. They are not involved in the program. There's no reporting requirement for GreenStep cities for the Met Council. They are obviously interested in supporting cities and their efforts. I work specifically on energy and clean energy, and so that's more my expertise, and they're definitely interested in helping cities that want to go down that path. There's been some question, I think, about funding with Met Council. The Met Council has funded my organization, the Great Plains Institute, and some of my colleagues to do some fee-for-service contract work. They have never directly funded the GreenStep Cities program, as far as I understand. And so there's been some confusion about that. You know, my colleagues did, on contract, do some work with the local planning handbook, and there's a number of places in the comp plans or the handbook that if you're looking at doing something on trees or doing this or doing whatever it might be, GreenStep Cities isn't, you know, because there's so many resources on the website for helping and best practices, they point to that as a resource quite a bit. But they are not a program partner, and they do not make any decisions with regards to the GreenStep Cities program, nor do they fund the GreenStep Cities program. So a little bit more about the program, again, small font. You know, I think one of the things, you know, especially when it comes to things like solar, you know, you as a city council set standards all the time, zoning and ordinance, et cetera. And the same thing applies for solar. It's a potential resource if you decide to develop it. And setting the standard of how you want that to be or not be, that's up to you. We have guidelines or ordinances that are models. If you want to use them, tweak them, change them, throw them out and start from scratch, it's all up to you. It's there as a resource. And then just a couple of testimonials, and I realized the first one, it's Elko New Market. Mark Nagel is the city administrator. And just some different quotes from folks, Andrea Lauer from Royalton, Pine City, and other cities that have just talked about how the program has really helped them quite a bit. And then Mike Franklin from the city of Jordan, a city council member in Jordan, also, you know, just really felt like the program helped their city, especially when it came to saving money and having a positive effect on the environment. And I was driving down here. I remembered that I was down here a year or two ago helping do a business blitz. My team came down and helped go out and knock on a bunch of business doors as cities, Hutchinson, Jordan, and others. Examples specifically of saving taxpayer money, because, you know, I can say that, but is that real? And we've got a number of different metrics and things from cities that share the money that they're saving. A lot of, you know, light replacements, whatever it might be, energy efficiency in city buildings is a really big way to save energy and save taxpayer money. So South St. Paul, Wyoming, Apple Valley. Sorry, I need my glasses to see here, and my glasses to see there, and my not having my glasses on to see here, so I can't decide which to do. It's just a struggle. The struggle is real. And then, you know, again, more cities, you know, Marshall, Minnehaha, New Hope. And I put in a mix of cities. I had pages of these testimonials, but a mix of cities, you know, big, small, near you, different, you know, just to kind of share the variety of them. And then just to highlight again, Chanhassen's a fairly new city, but I know it's a city near here. They've done some great work, you know, helping their residents save water. One of the biggest water issues is leaking irrigation systems. And there's a number of different really cool programs, a WaterSense program and other programs that I think the city of Shoreview also used and saved tons of money. First, just identifying for folks that they had a leaking irrigation system they didn't know. And so then they could save that water and money. And then we're award winning. we've won a couple of awards, which is always fun, being recognized for the work that we've done to help and support cities on their goal, on whatever goals. We don't come here to tell you guys what to do. Whatever you want to do, if we can be of assistance, that's what we're here for, is to help you with the outcomes that you're looking for with regards to sustainability. And I think that is my last slide, and I'll just stop and answer some questions, perhaps, if there are any.
Thank you. Council, questions?
I do have a question. Diana, how is this funded? Is it funded as a line item in the state budget, or where does the money to support your salary come from?
Yeah, Councilmember McMillan and other council members. So I'll first start with the state employees. So with the Pollution Control Agency, they have one full-time position. I don't know how they put it in the budget for the state Minnesota Pollution Control Agency budget that goes before the legislature, but there's one FTE full-time person at the PCA that is funded through state. I don't know if I think they're general appropriation, whichever. The money, there's no new money, it's the money that they've been getting. He's been working on the program since the beginning, so for 12 years, because we took a couple years to develop a program. Then the rest of us, like some of my colleagues, we have foundation funding mostly that covers that to help, be supportive to cities. We're seeing more and more cities really interested in doing things. Some and cities do it for different reasons. Some cities do it because they want to save money. Some, have sustainability at their heart. They want to do that, and they're looking for more assistance. And so we have some foundation funding that really helps us. And I have colleagues statewide that help with cities in other areas.
Who provides that foundation funding?
Well, one of the big funders for us is McKnight Foundation. Yeah. And we've had other Caroline Foundation. We've had other little bits and pieces.
Do you get funding from the Met Council?
I do not. Like I said, Great Plains Institute and my colleagues a few years ago got some money to do the local planning handbook and some of these other things. But the Met Council doesn't fund the GreenStep Cities program.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
and doesn't fund me.
who drafts these ordinances? Is it folks like yourself that are not part of the government working with the one employee at the Pollution Control Agency, and collectively you draw these up?
So one of my colleagues is actually a planner and has been doing this work for a long time and created model ordinances probably 15 years ago or so, and they just kept getting updated, and I think they're just doing another update based on a number of different things. But there's newer solar programs that have better ordinances as communities think about how do you want your development in your community to look, and different cities have different ideas about that. Yes, we want to develop as much, we see it as a resource, we want to develop it. Talk to the county of Chicago, who's making $277,000 a year in tax base from some of their solar farms up there, and so that's a motivation for them, but other cities have different plans. So again, a colleague that's a planner, works on those things because that's what he does. I'm not a planner.
Those community solar gardens, I've
Yeah.
seen statistics that say that they cost roughly $125 per kilowatt versus a gas-fired or coal-fired power plant that costs roughly $7 per kilowatt. So if you use a community solar garden, how is it that you achieve savings with that significant difference in cost per kilowatt hour?
It's a complicated formula, and I am, that is something that, and it's different for each single garden because it depends on, is it ground mounted, is it roof mounted, how much is the lease for either the land or the roof. I mean, there's a whole bunch of factors there, but there's a number of different, you have to go to each of those and look at the opportunity for that. They're not building new coal plants, so that it's hard to compare those. And right now, actually, our utilities are aiming at, closing down some of the coal plants that they do have, and they're taking on more wind and more solar and more things in their mix. Xcel Energy has announced huge goals for the sustainability that they want to have, and so they're investing more in the solar.
Right,
Solar
but
gardens, sorry.
even the numbers that I've seen with Xcel for their, if you will, commercial grade solar gardens, which are clearly different than the community. Their cost is still roughly $30 per kilowatt. So even they are not as cost-effective as gas or coal-fired plants.
Well, the the Public Utilities Commission and the utilities disagree. I mean, they're choosing some of those, especially more on the wind side, but also solar. The cost of that is coming down and down and down. And again, it's an interesting conversation. It's probably not as relevant to whether your city wants to be part of the program or not, and if you want to host a garden or not, that's, up to you all. But I think only 22% of homes are really well suited for solar, and so the community solar garden was another opportunity for folks that wanted to invest in solar to do it. And sometimes it's because they just don't want it on the roof. And if you can put solar panels all in one place, that the economies of scale, because you can put them in a place where you're going to get a better solar potential. It's a better deal. So, for a lot of folks, they want to buy into it, and there's a huge market for it.
All right, thank you. Council, any other questions?
How many staff members do you have? Does GreenStep have?
So that's complicated because it's a partnership. It's not an organization. And so there's, like I said, there's one full-time person at the Pollution Control Agency. There's a half a person at the Environmental Quality Board. And then there's a couple of nonprofit partners that, depending on what's going on in the time of the year and what's happening, what we put on the slide is it's about 4 full-time equivalents statewide for 135 cities to support those cities. So it's not
How do you
bad.
keep up with everybody?
Well, we do it in regions, and so I direct the metro region of CERTS, and so I'm the 11 county metro region, so I have like half of the GreenStep cities in my region. It's really hard, but then some of the other regions have fewer. But
Do you have volunteers that help you?
no, I'm Superwoman. It's a cape. It's a cape.
So if we want some assistance, we call you.
I'm the one. And Dana and I had already been talking last summer about me coming and doing a presentation about renewable energy. And I think that conversation then led to this. And she said, hey, can you come out and talk about the program? So here I am. But yeah, happy to help you think through, do a presentation more aimed at those kinds of things, depending on what you're interested in and what you want to know. And there's lots of options for residents and businesses, frankly, too, on energy efficiency and on renewables. And I also been doing a lot of work on electric vehicles. A lot of cities are really interested in that.
Well, yeah, with plugins for, my son lives in Dearborn, he's an electrician for Ford Motor.
Yeah.
And they installed the electric plugs for their
Mm-hmm.
cars all throughout all their parking lots, and he was involved in that, so
It's great.
there's a lot going on.
Yeah, I drove my electric car down here.
Did you?
I did, indeed.
Dan-
And it'll take me all the way back.
During steps 4 and 5,
Uh-huh.
there's some data collection happening.
Yep.
Could you talk a little bit about that? And is there, do you get down to individual households?
Oh, God,
for
no.
Water usage and electric?
Oh, God, no. No, it's more cumulative community data. And a number of cities are part of a project called Regional Indicators Initiative and volunteered early on to kind of have data collected for them on water, waste, transportation, and carbon. And so there's a bunch of cities that have the data and more that are getting that. But for 4 and 5, the city decides there's a bunch of metrics, and there's some that, if you want to go about this, here's, you have to create a baseline for step 4. And then there's a number that, we want you to look at, and then you can choose some optional ones. And then for step 5, it's about improvement on those metrics yearly, whether it's increased or decreased. Like you're increasing your energy efficiency, you're decreasing your carbon, or your, whatever the metric might be. So you want to improve. I don't want to say you go up because it's an improvement. So it could be up or down depending, but it's not household data. There's a lot of data privacy rules, and so that it's community-wide data. Yeah.
Council, any other questions? All right, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Shannon?
Good evening, Mayor Funk, council members. I'm glad to be here. Thank you for inviting me to speak tonight. I'm a council member from Minnetrista, so I understand what you guys do, and I have the utmost respect for sitting in these chairs because the decisions that you guys make sometimes put you at odds with organizations and people in your community and residents and each other sometimes. And it's making those decisions are difficult. And I respect all of you for serving. Minnetrista is not a GreenStep city, and the reason it's not is because I've been concerned about the program since I heard about it. And I thought I'd just share a little bit about how I learned about it and what my concerns are. I learned about GreenStep cities back in August of 2018 when Mayor Whalen asked a representative to come and talk to the council and tell us all about the program. And it was Ms. McGowan that came and spoke to us. So I was listening to the presentation. As I was listening, it became very clear that there was a lot of money behind this program. I saw the 29 best practices. I saw the sample ordinances that were, council members know that attorneys draft ordinances. I saw the coordination among the partners in the organizations and the state agencies, and I saw the data collection and all of that, and it was very clear to me that there was a lot of money behind this program. So once the presentation was over, another council member actually beat me to the punch because she saw the same thing, and she said, "Where does your funding come from?" And I think Councilmember McMillan asked the same thing tonight. And the answer was nonprofits, foundations, and grants. And after that, she said, the nonprofits are funded mostly by foundations and other aspects. That's a quote from the presentation, and other aspects. I have a really good malarkey detector. And other aspects told me there's some other funding that she doesn't want to talk about. So I went back to my office and I started researching GreenStep cities and where their funding comes from. And I went on their website and I found that one of their major program funders is the Met Council, despite what you just heard. And I can pass, if you could.
Let's get a copy of Dana.
So if you go to the GreenStep Cities website, on their About tab, at the very bottom of the page, you will see, and this isn't a page from their website, but this is this little piece at the top that says Program Funders, Met Council. It's one of their major program funders. That is from their website directly. I'll give you a chance just to read that. So the way this works is the Met Council, and what this paragraph says is the Met Council funds the staff positions in the nonprofits that run GreenStep cities. That's what this says. And also during the answer to that question of where does the funding come from, there was another question at the end of that that exchange, and a council member said, so there's no money from Hennepin County taxes or anything, and she replied, no. Well, I don't know if you know, but the Met Council's tax levy is levied through Hennepin County. That's who levies the tax levy for the Met Council. So that wasn't truthful either. And the other thing you'll notice here is I did some further research, and a Met Council member, Peter Lindstrom, is an employee of the Clean Energy Resource Team. That's one of the GreenStep Cities partners. And you can see in his bio that his job is to work with cities to join and deepen their involvement in Minnesota GreenStep cities. So he's the person charged with pushing this program through local governments. That's his job. And he works for one of the GreenStep Cities partner organizations. So when you hear that that the Met Council isn't a program funder, it says right on their website, the Met Council is a program funder. And I can assure you, most of the nonprofits that are partner organizations wouldn't be pushing GreenStep Cities if they didn't have the Met Council money behind them doing that. I also heard when I was,
Can I interrupt for just
Sure.
a second? I'm trying to make sure I understand what I'm reading here. It says program funders, that came from the Met Council website?
yes,
And it says here, several funders support the staff time of personnel from the 6 nonprofit GreenStep partner organizations?
yes.
So the Met Council funds 6 of these organizations? Is that what I'm reading?
It says several funders support them, but it lists 2, the McKnight Foundation and the Met Council.
Oh, okay. All right, so those are the 2, according to this at least, those are the 2,
Major funders of the program.
and there's 6 different organizations that receive that funding?
That's what it says.
Got it. All right, thank you.
Yep. I spoke at the Plymouth City Council meetings, at both of the meetings where they were considering the GreenStep Cities program. And one of the questions somebody came up and they said, well, these best practices are good best practices. It's just like when you're engineering something, you should have best practices to do things by. And the best practices that are here are not any kind of, they're not based on any universally accepted, standardized anything. These are best practices that the Met Council and these few people drew up, and they're subjective best practices. They're not objective. And they're not supported by any scientific standard or anything that is universally accepted. This is a Met Council-driven agenda that the Met Council came up with, and it's their desire to get cities to adopt these best practices and sample ordinances so that there's an enforcement mechanism to them, because the Met Council doesn't have any enforcement powers at all. Cities do, but the Met Council doesn't. That's what this is. This is a way for the Met Council to push their agenda on cities and get cities to enforce the ordinances and best practices and have you enforce it for them. And you have to ask yourself, why do they conceal the Met Council's involvement in this program? Why is that concealed? And I think we all know why. I think councils are suspect of the Met Council and their overreach into the autonomy of local governments all over the metro area. And that's why they're not up front with who's behind this program. And if there's any question about the Met Council's involvement in this, we just passed our comp plan, and I'm sure all of you were involved in your 2040 comp plan. In that comp plan template, go get it when you go home and do a Control F, a find on your PDF file of your comp plan, and just type in GreenStep. In that template for your comp plan, which the Met Council puts together, you will find GreenStep cities in your comp plan as choices, options in your water plan, your land use plan. The Met Council put those in the templates for cities to adopt, to say this is how we're going to take care of making sure our water is cleaner or meeting our requirements for this or that. They've got GreenStep cities best practices in there for you to choose to opt in. So what they did is they created a game for cities to play. And the game has winners and it has losers. And the winners are awards for the mayors to go to the League of Minnesota Cities and get an award and go up on stage and get recognized by their peers. That is the only reason cities join this program, is for that reason. There's no other reason to do it, because cities have access to all the different best practices and sample ordinances. They're at your fingertips. You can look at anything that you want and adopt anything you want without enrolling in the program. And then having your staff people get calls from this person that is charged with making sure that cities progress through the steps and implement the program.
How can he be on the council, the Metropolitan Council, that funds this organization that he works for, and then push that program? It seems like a conflict of interest.
Good question. Good question.
All right.
So, anyway, there are winners and losers, and one of the big winners, I'll pass this out, is in Minnetrista. We have a consultant that worked with us on our comp plan, and I don't know if you have a consultant that works with you on your comp plan, but his job was to interface with the Met Council, and we actually were arguing about the GreenStep Cities checkbox on our Table 28 in our water plan, and I wanted to take that checkbox off. Well, this is the guy that came and addressed the council and told us all the reasons why we couldn't do that and shouldn't do that. And even after the council decided that we wanted to take that checkbox off, he insisted on the minutes reflecting that we hadn't done that, because that would actually be saying that we weren't going to implement the GreenStep Cities program. So it was a weird council meeting, and I encourage you all to watch it if you have insomnia some night. But so if you look at his title, this is our contract engineering firm with the city of Minnetrista. His title is Senior Project Manager, Renewable Energies. He's advising the city on our comp plan and whether we should be involved in GreenStep Cities. Who do you think is going to get the projects, the best practice projects that come along when they're implemented? He's the project manager for the city. So, but the real losers are your residents when this program is adopted, because there are these best practices and sample ordinances contribute to rising housing costs, restrictions on private property use, higher taxes and fees for enforcing the best management practices, and probably subsidies to make some of those affordable to people that can't afford them. So this is a well-coordinated strategic effort by the Met Council, and they're hiding behind these partners to push this subjective agenda through local governments. That's what they're doing. They also up in Plymouth, they said, oh, this is a local homegrown program that's just Minnesota, and we're not affiliated with anybody else. I think she alluded to there's no international program, but they said there was no national program either. So I thought I would distribute this.
Dana, we need to put these documents on the website.
Mayor, members of the council, we will make all the documents distributed during the meeting tonight available as part of our update when we post our minutes.
So this is called the Sustainable States Network. And you can see down the side, there are other states that are members, one of which is Minnesota, GreenStep Cities. There's Virginia, Go Green Virginia. There's California, Green Cities California. So there is indeed a national organization. And I didn't have this handout for you, but that same website, under working groups, there is a working group titled 10,000 Resilient Cities, chaired by Lola Schoenrich from Minnesota GreenStep Cities. So this is indeed a national organization, and their goal is to get 10,000 cities to become a part of it. So this is not some homegrown, grassroots Minnesota effort. This is a Met Council effort, and there are organizations in other states with similar organizations like the Met Council that are pushing this.
Just as a point of reference, we had the same template in the city of Victoria paid roughly $250,000 as part of the comprehensive planning process. It'd be interesting. Well, we can handle this when we get into the discussion, but do we have GreenSteps in our comprehensive plan?
Mayor, members of the council, I was trying to pull up our comprehensive plan. My computer just actually bit the dust on me, blue screen of death. But that being said, we do have a sustainability component as part of our plan. And to do, as Ms. Bruce suggested, to just see where we might have tagged the GreenStep. I don't know that off the top of my head, but.
All right, we can look at that later. Thanks. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sure, it's in table 28 in the template. So just to wind things up, I'm sure Victoria wants to make sound environmental decisions. I'm sure you all do, as we do in Minnetrista. And you are closest to your community, and you know what those decisions should be. And what this program does is it turns the decision-making dynamics of a city on its head, because it makes decisions based on getting awards at the League of Minnesota Cities meeting more important than making the right decision.
Council members and mayors of cities are making decisions just so that they can get awards?
No, I don't. I think, like most council members, they're overwhelmed when they get their council packets, and GreenStep Cities comes and they make a presentation, and they think oh, that's great, it's voluntary, it's, butterflies and rainbows and bunnies, and sure, let's do it. So no, I don't think it's a conscious decision that they're doing this to get awards and recognition. I think they honestly want to do the right thing. They're lured into it by the awards and recognition.
Got it.
The vanity of it all?
There is an element of that. I believe there is.
Wow.
So
Good ideas about replacing light bulbs and things things that you should do and you probably are doing already. But the point is you can avail your person, and they've got a paid staff person with the GreenStep Cities program whose job it is to make sure that you're progressing. And your staff person is going to continually be contacted and asked, where are you? You're at step 1. Why aren't you at step 2? You know that chart that we show at the League of Minnesota Cities meeting is going to show you're at the bottom of the list. And so it's that kind of thing that is going to happen. But I just want to close with a quote from a council member from Plymouth when I was up there, and because we're talking about the voluntary nature of this program, and he said, it was Jim Prom, I don't know if any of you know him, but he voted against the resolution for GreenStep Cities, and this Plymouth decided not to join. But he said, quote, "This is the most impressive push for a voluntary program I've ever seen in my life." The council chambers were packed with all these people in green shirts and leis and hats and necklaces, and it was bizarre that all these people were there to push this program. And you have to ask yourself, what's behind it? And that's my concern. And that they're not forthcoming, and I don't like to be lied to. That's the biggest problem that I have, is the lack of transparency in this program.
Thank you. Council, questions?
Ms. Bruce, I'm curious about, you had mentioned as you went through your comprehensive planning process, and there was this box to check. What was the outcome of that conversation? Did you end up checking the box? And if so, what was the consequence for doing so?
We were about to submit our comp plan. It was the vote to submit our comp plan, and this was my first term, and I had read the comp plan from cover to cover. It was over 300 pages right after I started on the council, and it had been a couple years since I'd read it. So I knew the vote was coming up, so I thought I'd read through it again. And with the new knowledge that I had of GreenStep cities, I saw GreenStep cities on a table, and the checkbox was checked. And so I expressed my concern. The staff didn't like it at all because they were going to have to amend things, and they were ready to submit it to the Met Council. And I insisted, and the other council members finally.
I can learn to understand you much better if I.
Am I not speaking clearly?
I like that. Way to go, Cindy.
Yeah. So the outcome was we did uncheck the box, but the bizarre thing was that they insisted on putting in the minutes that we did not decide not to join the GreenStep Cities program.
Who's they?
Well, a conversation had occurred between this gentleman that is our consultant and our city clerk. And when I said I wanted to just take the checkbox off and have it reflected in the minutes, that we were choosing not to choose the GreenStep Cities program in our comp plan, she said, well, we can't do that.
Did you check with wouldn't that be a council decision? To uncheck it? Wouldn't that
Well,
be a council decision?
Yeah, you'd have to watch the video because it's complicated. We did take the checkbox off. We unchecked the box.
Okay.
We, the council.
We, the council, unchecked the box.
So when you submitted your comp plan to the Met Council, was there a consequence for doing that? Did you hear any feedback from them?
There was a lot of discussion about that, having to resubmit. I'm sorry?
A lot of discussion between whom?
Among the council members and staff of, are we going to have to resubmit this because you have to have your other jurisdictions look at it and comment and all of that. And when it came back to the council at our next meeting, they had discovered that there wasn't going to have to be any resubmission to anybody, that we could just make that change and submit it.
So that was just all internal? It
Yes.
wasn't the Met Council coming in and saying you can't do
No.
Okay.
No.
Got it. Thank you.
Are you aware of cities who are in this GreenStep program that have had some kind of a negative consequence or experienced some kind of bad result of being as part of this?
I'm aware of, there was a story done a few weeks back, and it was around the 10th anniversary of the GreenStep Cities program, and they surveyed all the cities and how far along they were in the program, and they found that most of the cities, the majority of the cities, never progressed past step 2 because, and you can only surmise that it's because of the burden of reporting and just
Staff time.
and doing it, that their priorities are somewhere else. So I don't have any stories per se about anything negative that happened. I think cities just generally abandon the program and just stop participating in it.
And so they haven't been badgered to continue on?
Well, they're contacted. They're contacted, and that's what the GreenStep Cities staff people are supposed to do. Is they're supposed to make sure that cities are progressing. That's their job. So the staff people will continue to be contacted by GreenSteps.
Do you think they're being bullied?
I'm not going to go there. No, I'm not. I don't think
They're
they're
being
bullying.
aggressive?
I can't speak to that because we're not a GreenStep city, and I don't have a staff person that's been pressured in any
I don't know
way.
that we have. Have we had any aggressive contact with GreenStep?
Councilmember Black, Mayor, members of the council, in my experience both in previous cities that I've worked for as well as current, that's not been my personal experience. Outside of in the year that I've been here, and in conversations with the staff that are our primary contact, we have, outside of us reaching out proactively for assistance, we have only completed the annual survey that's required as participating in that program, and that takes about 10 minutes of our time.
Okay.
So Did, you worked at Burnsville?
That's correct.
So did Burnsville participate in this?
Burnsville was a step side, or is a step 5 city.
Okay, so did you, you were involved in city government, did you see any negative vibes, any kind of thing going on where you felt the city was entrapped and stuck in some kind of snare or conspiracy or?
Council member vote, mayor, members of the council, how I would answer that is the city council elected to only move forward with the activities that met their sustainability goals. So outside of their comprehensive plan, the city of Burnsville has quite an extensive sustainability program. They do have staff that are dedicated to that initiative. And so they had a proactive program that I would say is a fairly large effort to reach some very high-reaching goals in terms of sustainability. And the GreenStep program offered a lot of resources for them, ideas, springboard for assistance to help run through model ordinances, for example. But I personally never witnessed or experienced anything negative to that effect.
All right, council, further questions, discussions? Thank you, Shannon.
Thank you.
All right, well, I want to see us removed from this. I just don't think it's worth our time and effort, especially since we can go and look at the sample ordinances and adopt anything we want. The part of my problem with this is the Met Council is behind this. They already tax us without representation. This whole thing, like, for example, with the comprehensive planning process, good that we should do that. I didn't realize at the time that GreenSteps was in there, but we could do the comprehensive planning process ourselves internally, which is a good process. But every time we do these things and the Met Council gets their hooks into the city, I just think that it takes away from the local control. In this particular program with GreenSteps, eventually as it progresses, you get more and more requirements. As you heard Dana say, in Burnsville, they were active and willing participants and they wanted to do that. I don't see there's a cost benefit for us to do this, and I don't want to see us spend time on this. If we recall, I helped create the Water and Quality Committee here in Victoria. I've also talked about Lennar and some of the trees in trying to save the topography of some of this development. I think we're better suited to decide what happens in Victoria. And we can use the resources, but we don't have to be an active participant in the program. Plus, I don't want staff getting pressured to try to say, hey, move the program forward. So I just don't see there's any upside. It does nothing to withdraw ourselves from the program. We can always keep an eye on it. And if there's something that comes along that makes sense and local residents say, let's go ahead and do that, well, then we can always discuss that. But these sustainability options, as I mentioned, like the cost of the community solar gardens, they're not cost effective. It's the taxpayers paying for all of this. And I just don't think that we should be participating in that. So that's my comments. Others?
I agree, but we are in the driver's seat, and I don't see any reason to actively withdraw from the program. I think it's great because it creates awareness, and I think we have residents who are interested in sustainability, and I think it provides some tangible ideas for us. I think energy efficiency and water conservation are good ideas. I'm not in favor of adopting a big, comprehensive, overreaching climate action plan, but I think that we've implemented some good best practices, and those kinds of things make us good stewards of the taxpayer money and our natural resources. So knowing that we are solidly in the driver's seat, it is not part of our comprehensive plan, I don't see any reason to take action to get out of a program that we're not actively pursuing.
Okay.
I agree with Councilor McMillan. If you look at our ordinances, we have a tree protection ordinance. The only reason we have that tree protection ordinance is because of Green the Green Space Program. They're the ones that advised us that it would be a good thing to do, and it is a good thing, and we're going to be modifying it and making it better. That's just an example. I think it stimulates and it causes awareness. It's a resource if you have to make a phone call and you need some guidance or some background. There's somebody there. We're in the driver's seat. We won't do rain gardens if they don't make sense, that kind of thing. I see no reason to jump out of this plane. You know, we're not spending huge amounts of time. The city staff is not spending a lot of time. And have been benefits to the city, and there could be benefits in the future. I guess I've said everything, I believe.
Judy, anything to add?
I agree. I didn't even know about the GreenStep program until it was brought up, and then I went online and looked at everything. They had a lot of great ideas, and I think they're trying to help us. I don't know what the issue is with the Met Council, but I know that by not participating isn't going to stop the Met Council from being the Met Council. So we've been in it, we've used it. I like the fact that we have the resources, and to say, well, you can use them, but you don't have to be a part of it. That's kind of like saying, why buy the cow when you can get the milk for free? You know? So
I'm not going there.
so if we don't want to move any further on it, we don't have to, but we need to be a part of it, I think.
Councilmember Gregory.
Conservation and sustainability, those are all good options, good ideas. We should always be looking for ways to save money and conserve energy. That's a good thing. But having a program out there, signing up for a program, and then just leaving it dormant, I don't know if that makes any sense or not. That doesn't, if we're going to be in the program, we're in the program. To say we're going to stay at step 3 forever.
We're at
I don't know.
2.
I haven't had a
We're-
chance to.
Nobody said that. Nobody said
No, but I mean,
Are we,
We're
Dana?
at 3.
We
I
two
thought we
or
were
3?
staff report.
3.
We're at 3?
Yeah, because I looked it up and I found out where we were.
So, I mean, it is unusual that at the top of the page, you've got founders as the McKnight Foundation and Met Council. Met Council is unbelievable. It started off with this small organization that in the late 60s that was just going to manage wastewater, and now they're into housing, transportation, land use. They're the reason we have to spend a couple $100,000 every 10 years on our comp plan. So it's interesting.
They took our
that-
transportation funding away, too.
Yeah, so
Let's-
it is interesting. I mean, they say they're not involved, but there they are at the top of the website. Having a program that is just dormant, and we're not using it, and we haven't used it for a number of years.
3 for sure.
It seems like we can take steps, we always take steps to try to save money. And we can do that by all kinds of resources. So having this out there, encouraging staff to keep us moving forward in the program. Personally, I would vote to pull us out.
Really?
So I agree with the conservation, and I'm repeating, but I was the one who brought forward the Lake and Water Quality Committee. I also was the one that was questioning the topography in the trees with Lennar and the development. And I agree that we can do this, but I don't like the fact that the Met Council is pushing this. They try to hide this. There seems to be conflicts of interest here in the system, if you will. The very people that are pushing it are paid, and they have a financial incentive to push this thing. And we can do this without being a part of it. So I think we have a split council. I don't think there's anything further to discuss. With that, I'll make a motion that we officially withdraw the City of Victoria from the Green Steps program. Can I get a second to that motion?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
All right, motion fails on a 3-2 vote. Okay, thanks, council. Next item, 7-2, rename Wasserman Lake Park.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Another Wasserman Park item for you, and I, as we continue through this process, I promise that it will get fewer and fewer. As part of your responsibility, as a council person, the council is responsible for officially naming parks within the community. Generally, when we have a park or parkland, as we're working through development, we assign it a working name, which we did with Lake Wasserman Park, or Wasserman Lake Park, excuse me. So as I have attached the administrative policy that we've used for a number of years now, and at the last Park and Recreation Committee meeting in January, we had a very lengthy discussion about naming. And they've set forward 2 names for you as a recommendation, but of course you have the option to take that as it may be or choose another name as you wish. So they provided Wasserman Lake Preserve and Wasserman Nature Preserve, I think based on the fact that it's a different type of park than any other park that we're going to see in the short term within the city of Victoria. So they wanted to make sure that the name matched what the park will be. So with that, that was their recommendation to you. I'm happy to answer any questions, and you guys get to choose.
Thank you, Ann.
Yep.
The question for the council, I think I'd like to actually throw this open to the community as a whole and have like a park naming contest to see if they can come up with something in addition. There's no timeline here where we need to name it immediately, right?
We will be working with the landscape architects in the Watershed District. We are now into a concept phase for signage. So ideally, that is going to move along simultaneously with the construction project as we move forward. So the sooner the better, I think, on official naming.
Right. Council, is there any appetite to try to ask the community to provide some additional names other than just the Park and Rec?
We've got a strong Park and Rec group, and they did have a very lengthy discussion. It was a good discussion. And I would prefer that we move forward and pick a name tonight.
I think.
All right, that's fine. What were the 2 choices?
The 2 choices that they brought forward were Wasserman Lake Preserve and Wasserman Nature Preserve. I know that there was some suggestion too. The Savannah came through, but it was not a selection that went forward to the council.
Go ahead.
I'd kick off the idea of Wasserman Lake Preserve. I like that.
Wasserman Lake, Judy?
Actually, I was thinking Lake Wasserman.
Preserve?
Kind of.
Or just
Well, you
Lake
could go
Wasserman?
Lake Wasserman Preserve. They were trying to figure out how to say Wasserman Lake Nature Preserve, but they thought it was too many words because I watched the video.
If you go to,
But I thought if you went Lake Wasserman Nature Preserve, it'd sound better.
if you go to a county map, is it Lake Wasserman or Wasserman Lake?
Wasserman Lake.
Okay.
But can we change that?
That would be probably through the DNR, and I'm not sure.
That'd be problematic.
If you think the Met Council's challenging, the DNR's even tougher, I think.
I know they really wanted Lake in there because that's the whole reason we're doing all this.
Oh, I'm sorry, Deb, what did you say?
I like Wasserman Lake Preserve. I'd make a motion that we go with Wasserman Lake Preserve.
Is second, please.
I'll second that motion.
Discussion, so we've got 2 Wasserman Lake.
Yeah.
That's,
The discussion, I just think that if we leave out Lake, again, from an outsider looking in, they're going to be expecting a different kind of park, so I think Lake is important. I'd be very much in favor of.
all right, it sounds like that's what it is. So we have a valid motion for Wasserman Lake Preserve. Any further discussion, council?
Just thank you to the Park and Rec Committee. I know
Yes.
that
Yep,
is a
yep.
great discussion, and we appreciate their input.
You're going to be a lot quicker.
Well, you guys did all
That was a
the,
lot
You did all the vetting work, so thank you for
I
that.
watched
Thanks for
that
the
and I was
hours.
like, whew.
For the public, that was John Carlson, a member of the Park and Rec in the back. So we've got a valid motion, Wasserman Lake Preserve. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Wasserman Lake Preserve.
So that'd be on the contract, right?
And you got a double header here tonight. Item 7.3, approve resolution supporting a DNR trail application.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, Council. So we have also been working on trail gaps for a number of years. And at the last Park and Recreation Committee, this was also another very lengthy discussion. But as part of the council's strategic planning, there was identified as 1 to 2 trails constructed throughout that strategic plan. Last year, the Park and Rec Committee spent a lot of time establishing criteria and trying to prioritize all the trail gaps within the community. I think we've got about 12 of them. In the latter part of last year, I guess it was April of last year, this information was presented to the council, and you guys verbally gave the okay on selecting the top 3. At least we'd begin working on those. Back in 2018, the council established a trail fund that was incremental in 100,000, and it would go up annually. So by the end of 2022, we'll have roughly about $491,000 in the trail fund. So right now, we have when we decided our top 3, I've really been focusing on Bavaria Road with the Park and Rec Committee. We kind of looked at both east and west sides. And we had a very lively discussion about where that should go, and I know Council Member Gregory attended the meeting as well. And so one of the opportunities that we have coming up, we have, the DNR has a grant application process for trails. And the plan for at least Bavaria at this moment in time would be to submit a grant application in 2021, and we have until June of 2022, I believe, to spend that dollar amount. So we'd be looking at grant application this year, working on the trail alignment, getting cost estimates, getting bidding put together, and then look at construction in 2021 for the Bavaria Trail. If by chance we don't get any grant funding in 2021 or in 2020, we'd still have another opportunity as long as the funding is available in 2021 to submit another grant. So ideally, we'd just like to keep this process moving. And I know at the Park and Rec Committee, we finally made the decision to move forward with, or present to council that we move forward with the Bavaria Road East Trail and submit that grant application this year.
Real quick, there's already trail on the west. I'm sure the Park and Rec talked about this.
Correct. There is some trail on the west.
Right, and it's not connected, it's just when that one development, I can't remember the name of the development. So it's not connected on either end of that trail, but the trail was put in. On the east, is there anything like that also, or why was the east selected versus the west?
So there's trail coming up now with the new development just north of 86th Street. We have put in trail up to Alley Lane. As part of the Highway 5 improvements that were done years ago, we actually graded the trail in on the west side along the Arboretum property. So that's all flat and ready to go.
You mean along Bavaria?
On the east side, sorry, the east side.
Okay.
We have more Arboretum property. I think we've got a great opportunity to work with them on trail on the east side. We have Public Works that's on the east side. The topography tends to lend itself better on the east side pretty much all the way through, that I think you're going to have less grading impacts, less retaining wall than you would on the east side. And private property.
West side.
West side, sorry. there's a lot of private property trees, landscaping that likely would be impacted on the west side. So those were several of the reasons why the Park and Rec Committee recommended going to the east side, at least getting started with it.
What about with the Arboretum? I've heard in the past, sometimes it may be a little challenging to be able to get a trail through there. Do you have any insight into that?
Sure. As the Arboretum obviously is governed by the University of Minnesota, and they have what's called the real estate office, which if anything goes on their property, in the past, we've had to use license agreements, and I think, Kara, this time around, they're not doing those? Or are they still doing those?
I've heard easements now.
Yeah, easements, so, but we've had,
Somebody pursue it.
yeah, we won't know until we get there. We're thinking right now, we're gonna try to put as much of the trail in right-of-way, county road right-of-way, and city right-of-way, that we can to minimize private property impacts and impacts to anywhere where we'd have to pay some additional funding for right-of-way purchase, or, land purchase, so.
Do you anticipate a lot of, there's what, a couple of properties? There's the
There's
tree
several.
farm, and there's a couple of properties south of that on Bavaria on the west side?
Yep.
Or east side, rather?
Yep, we've been working on this piece for a number of years, and staff had met with a couple of the property owners, and I know that the tree farm was willing to work with the city at that point in time. And I think overall the neighbors were genuinely okay with moving forward. But it has been a number of years, and the potential exists that turnover has occurred within those. So until we get out and start physically talking to the neighbors there.
So all things considered, you think for cost and acquisition, the east side will be the most cost-effective for the taxpayers, easiest to get done?
Yes, at this point in time.
Is the 600,000 a good number, or is that?
We have some preliminary numbers from, we had hired a consulting firm to put together a real brief layout, and they're estimating between 400, these are just real rough costs, I think it was 450 up to 1 million, and that's based on urban section road versus rural section road. So rural sections are ditches, there's no curb gutter, and if you were to have to put something like that in, that's when your costs start going up. So
We don't anticipate curb
we're-
gutter in the near term.
we're hoping. And a lot of that actually already has curb, especially on the south side of 82nd. There's a lot of curb in already, so, and I know there's a place that is for sale and marketing and, potentially another development. So we'll grab property through that process if the opportunity arises, so.
Got it. Just real quick, it should say for the third item, Lake Bridge, there's a G missing. Not that it makes any difference, but.
Yeah, my apologies.
I was wondering where.
Lake Bride.
Yeah.
Where is that?
It's a mythical neighborhood.
Yeah, it's a new one. Council, any further discussion, questions?
I have a question. Our strategic plan said that we're going to do a trail connection in 2020. So what's going on here? I mean, shouldn't we have put in this grant application last year?
Well, we don't have the funds for it. The grant application pays up to $150,000. And today, we don't have even barely enough to cover the costs on that. Actually, at the next Park and Recreation Committee meeting, we will be discussing a trail connection as part of the intersection improvements at County Road 11, 18, and 43.
Yeah, and that's where the second one will happen, because that's going to get taken care of by virtue of the intersection improvements.
That will be a decision that the Park and Rec Committee and the council will have to make. But that could be, at least in my mind, that's a connection.
That's the common sense one, because we're doing the intersection anyways with the light. So,
So those were add-ons for the county to look at. The city will still be responsible for.
We have the budget thing now where we intentionally put money in for trail connection.
Yes.
And we ratchet it up. And
Yep.
and we're so glad to see that. But in the long run, with 11 or 12 trail connections already identified, and we need a lot of money just for trail connections, much less parks. So did we broach the subject of using franchise fees for trail connections at all? Have we come to any conclusions for that?
Councilmember Vogt, Mayor, members of the council, no, we've not specifically talked about using franchise fees for that, but we can certainly have a policy discussion about that. We broadened to use the franchisees bond proceeds to cover the Wassermann Park
Right.
land purchase. But the policy is yours, and so the changing the policy is at your discretion.
So, Judy?
The other thing I wanted to ask is when we bond for Marsh Lake Road, could we bond for more to get the trail done?
They would have to be separate, I would think.
Would it have to be separate? Why would it have to be separate?
So,
We can't bond for one thing and then use it for something else, unless
Well,
it's
you bond-
combined.
Yeah, say for
Decided not to.
road and a trail
Well, maybe
connection, and trail connection.
So, may I just say one thing without the, with the timing, we haven't even begun engineering on this trail yet. So we need to select an engineering firm, we need to get surveying done, we need to contact,
Now you're talking.
right, we need to.
Hang on a second,
we-
we've
we
got
need to-
multiple conversations going on, hang on.
Yeah, we need to contact residents, so it's a long process, and I don't believe that we could actually get it done in 2020, regardless if we had the money or not.
So we were kind of blowing hot air in our strategic plan. We said we were gonna do one of these in 2020.
No,
I really believed it.
No, I'd scroll up, I think we can. I think we can do number 2 when we put in the light at 18, 43, and 11.
Get that done.
I think we can get that done.
2020?
Yeah.
Hey, okay.
Yes, that's what will be coming to you at the next council meeting.
Yeah. Scroll up, Cindy, back up to the top.
Sorry.
The 3 options.
It's a resolution?
Whoa,
No, what?
Where are we?
there's something wrong with this computer.
Jan hasn't now.
Well, they're
There.
different sizes, so.
Oh,
Jeez, that's annoying.
my apologies.
There, we can at least see it.
I'm trying to go down.
Stop, we're there.
It's going on by itself.
Is our computer taking off on its own? Alexa, are you listening?
We're asking for a grant, right?
Oh, jeez.
I might need computer classes, is what I should be asking for.
The point I was trying to make is item 2 here, County Road 43, 11, and 18. When we put the light in, I think we've got 479, or 492,000 in 2020. If I understand it correctly, I think we have enough money to fix those crosswalks and do the trail connections at that point, so we can hit at least item 2. It won't be 1, we won't be able to get done, but we can get number 2 done.
Well, that's a good thing.
Okay.
Okay.
That County Road 43 and 11 project, that runs actually from County Road 11 all the way to the trail connection in Watermark is that trail. So the sidewalk piece that was identified with the county project runs from County Road 11 on the south side of 43 to the townhome area.
Right.
That's that one.
So we
So
can
you
get
guys
them
will
off the
have,
road.
right, you guys will have that decision to have to make too.
I thought we already approved that. The council already approved that sidewalk down to the townhomes?
Not that I'm aware of. We've just gotten estimates on that, so we'll be bringing that to the council.
Got it,
Easy
okay.
enough to cross
We
the
have to-
highway there, it just would be a little bit unsafe to get over on the other trail and keep going
Well,
into the countryside.
I think it's just being able to get the property, because there's homes there.
Greencrest people really are,
I know they were.
No, I think-
We've got 3 homes to get
yeah.
okayed to get that sidewalk in.
Yeah, and so that's going to come back. I think we'll
Yes.
be able to do that.
Yep.
With the intersection improvements, we'll have safe crosswalks to get across and then get over. And then on the north side of 18, east of 11, down to that first neighborhood, that's where you're talking about putting the connection in?
Right by Lions Park.
Right.
Yes.
Okay, but it's on, basically the north
It's on
side of
the
County Road
north
18?
side, yes. Yep.
Okay, all right, so I think we're on the same page. All right, the, council, any other further discussion about this? If not,
I think just should be noted that Bavaria Road East there's a lot of regional significance there, and I think our chances for a grant are pretty good for that.
Isn't
I
that
think
a,
we should try for every grant we can get.
isn't that a connection to the whole regional trail system?
Yes.
In the West Metro?
Yes,
So that's really
Significant.
significant.
yes.
I think that actually,
Strengthens our grant.
right, exactly.
And the Arboretum is very interested in maintaining access. And, you know, I would have high hopes of them working with us in a positive manner.
Well, this is actually good for them, too. It
Yeah.
gets bike traffic into the
Right.
Arboretum.
Yeah, and they have always been very supportive. It just depends on the real estate office with at the University of Minnesota and how they will deal with that moving forward. If we have to be on Arboretum property, we will try to stay in the right of way.
Okay.
All right, thanks. Can I get a motion, please?
I'll make a motion that we approve resolution supporting a DNR trail application and authorize staff to submit a DNR local trail connections grant for Bavaria Trail East.
Thank you. Second, please.
Second?
Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Round table. Dana, anything?
Nothing from staff, Mayor.
Council? Hearing none. Reports. Bob?
No, thank you, sir.
Yep. Dana?
Nothing from staff, Mayor.
Cindy, does Alexa have anything to report?
Broke down, I think.
Council members, any reports?
I think I'm good tonight.
Okay, if there's nothing else, you sure?
Is this where we rip up all our papers now?
Oh, yes. Yeah, okay. Can
Make a
I,
motion that we adjourn.
thank you. Second, please.
Second?
All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 We're adjourned.